Okay, here we are, and it's Monday morning, and Pat McCart is just waiting for us. Pat, this is the beginning of a new week, okay?
Yes.
What good are you going to do in the world this week? How
Jude,
will you leave the world a better place at the end of this week?
Chatting to you, Jude, is my good deed for the week.
Oh, is that your penance? You saying that?
That's my penance, yeah. Jude, it's a lovely day here, so anyway, whatever.
It's good to be alive. Good to be alive.
Exactly.
I remember saying to somebody one day it was peeing the rain, and this woman was saying, "Oh God, that's a miserable old day." And I says, and a fit of positive thinking, I said, "There are no miserable old days. They're all good." And it's true. True. We're lucky. Okay, affairs of state. The obvious one is: did you watch the telly? Did you? We skipped the channels last night. Macron. Emmanuel, which means God is with us. Emmanuel Macron.
Macron. Yeah, Jude, I got the impression, how do you put this, that people voted with him rather than for him. I don't know if you get what I'm meaning by that.
Yeah.
He's not neither popular nor on the right nor on the left. And I think that it was sort of Hobson's choice. They didn't want Marine Le Pen, and like some of the things she's been at recently have sort of scared the horses. But Macron is not popular either, far from it, in fact. And I think there was a lot of people on the left particularly held their noses and voted for him because the choice was between him and Le Pen. And by the way, I think Macron knows that. In fact, he acknowledged it during his acceptance speech last night, that a lot of people on the left particularly had voted for him. Dude, this is a guy who I think worked for one of the big banks. Was it Rothschilds or?
Yes, it was Rothschilds.
Rothschilds or whatever, yeah. And this is no friend of the working poor. This guy tried to bring in, a lot of the sort of big business things, people retiring later on, longer working hours and all that sort of stuff, business friendly stuff. Now the French put it up to him and he had to back off. But he's a real sort of, without question, he is right of center when it comes to economics and so on. But the bottom line of it, he got, 59%, Le Pen got 41%. Now, that's the highest vote the far right has ever got. So it's quite obvious France is a very, very divided country.
Well, there certainly is a constituency that are behind Le Pen and behind her father before her. But that is a big gap at the same time, Pat. I mean, if you won an election, 58% or 59% to 41. I think it's well, that's a pretty clear margin. Clearly I'm much more popular than my opponent. Micheál Martin has been talking about it, and he says that the European project, which remains the bedrock of prosperity and well-being on our continent, is something that we share. And I think by and large that's true. Certainly Ireland's all for the EU. The south of Ireland is all for the EU, and probably the north. Oh, yes, the north too, because 56%. And that's certainly what Macron is a big champion of. He wants to really integrate, I think, maybe the EU more. According to the commentators last night, they said that there's I see an irony in what they said. They said Le Pen has modified her stance and says she believes in a continued EU, but a very much reformed one.
Yeah.
Actually, that's kind of, to be truthful, if she was going to follow through in that, that would be near enough to my own view. But I
think that's why she got 41%. There's a lot of people, I'm one of them, who think the EU. Start again, Pat. During the economic crisis, I detested the EU's role, the way they treated the small countries, particularly Greece, Ireland, Cyprus, and so on. The small, all right, Jesus. Anyway, the small state. But hey, Jude, Germany wasn't deep doo-doo at the start. France wasn't deep doo-doo. Spain wasn't. They did nothing with them. So this band of brothers sort of crap that they were spewing out now. Now, having said that, they sort of, in my eyes, they sort of redeemed themselves to an extent during the whole Brexit thing. Europe was very, very strongly on Ireland's camp, very, very strongly, and sometimes even to its own detriment. So they redeemed themselves. But the thing about Jude, here's the thing, as far as I can figure out, why Macron is so welcomed, his victory is so welcomed across Europe. You have Boris Johnson, populist in London, look what he's done. He upset the apple cart. Trump in America really upset the whole thing about a populist leader calling for, getting out of NATO, having worse relationships with the EU and so on. And then look at Poland and Hungary, where your man Orban is not playing ball at all with the EU. So another disruptive leader in France, like Le Pen, would have said the whole European project would have been definitely under stress, particularly with the war in Ukraine. So what they know what they have with Macron. He's pro-Europe. He sort of plays centre field, down like he's the same sort of approach as Ireland, France, Spain, all the sort of middle of the road politicians. So right now, the sort of steady hand on the wheel. That's how Macron is regarded. Le Pen would have been upending EU big time.
Yeah, somebody said last night, I think, that there would have been Frexit. That actually was her goal, Frexit. To leave the EU because of her belief in France and so on. And that would have been really bad news. I mean, one of the things with regard to Ukraine, no matter what you might argue in terms of, it being black and white, most people want to see the West united against Putin. And if Macron had been defeated, that would have broken that sort of solid front.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What's more, actually, it brings me back to another thing. Boris Johnson saying he's going to bring in legislation where they're going to simply ignore the treaty they have signed with regard to the withdrawal bill and the protocol. Now, that will mean here's Boris Johnson saying he wants to penalize and lead the assault, if you like, against Putin because he's breaking international law by what he does. Yeah. And he himself is doing that very thing. He's breaking international law by casting aside a treaty. So both Le Pen and Johnson are bad news for, I think, the West and certainly for the EU. A little thing struck me, Pat, and then we'll leave this and move on to the next one. You notice that when he started his speech and he mentioned the Le Pen, there was booing. Yeah. And he said, no booing, we don't want booing. And they stopped then and they clapped. I was wondering, I mean, when you stop to think about it, booing is a very childish kind of a thing to do. It's the sort of thing, sucks boo, in the school. Exactly. I at the risk of repeating something that your house guest, Jeremy Corbyn, once said, when he came in, first of all, as the leader of the Labour Party, he talked about a gentler, kinder politics. Yeah. But in no time at all, he was driven to the point where they shout the same way as Boris Johnson. Yeah. You think, is there a case for politicians when they're talking, or people who are discussing politics, talking about it in a rather more gentle or sort of civilized or adult way?
But it's never going to happen. Politics is probably the last blood sport that's out there, if you know what I mean. And it's never. Can you imagine trying to be gentle in the House of Commons with all that rabble roaring and shouting? Okay, but the point, taking the point you're making, is Macron last night, he's setting the tone or trying to set the tone. France, Jude, is seriously divided, and the divide is getting quite deep. I know it's not going the other way; it's going going north, in the sense that it's getting deeper. Yeah. He's saying last night, no one will be left behind. The standard of living in France has gone way down. They've got a big Arab population, and a lot of people are sort of saying, look, this wearing the hijab or hijab and the I don't know what they call the thing in head covering that they're on public places. That's unacceptable. We've had a couple of quite serious terrorist attacks. Remember the guy drove the lorry down the street and just whammed everybody out of the way. Then remember the Bataclan. Remember the attack. So there's a lot of anti-Arab feeling in there, and that was the cohort that Le Pen was going for, and you can understand why. Like Jude, she got 41.4% of the vote, nearly 42%. Dude, that's a lot of people. I know it is, Pat, but I wouldn't get carried away. Now, a lot of people might have been, just as a lot of people might have been voting for Macron, because they couldn't stand Le Pen, not because they loved Macron. I think the other way around. There would have been people voting for Le Pen, not that they loved Le Pen, but they just couldn't stand Macron. So, besides that, let's face it, if you had a United Ireland poll
and it was 58% to 41%, you would say, look, there's a massive.
I got in, but Jude, no, but you see, Le Pen is a very divisive, a polarizing figure. Jude, the fact that somebody, this is the far right, Jude, we're not talking about some sort of middle of the road. This is the far right, and I mean the far right. Their policies are, quite a lot of them are racist, and they want to chuck out people out of France, and they want to secularize the schools, no costume. Jude, and they want to sort of reform the EU. Some people say they want to leave the EU. She's big friends with Putin and so on. She regards Putin, I heard it on this morning saying she regarded Putin as a good ally to France. Jude, and you can imagine the upheaval of the cart in France had she got in. So, Jude, a lot of people knew what they were voting for.
It really would. It would have been similar to the effect that Trump had in the States. That kind of instability, which would be disastrous at the present moment, I think. Anyway, I still think that thing about no booing. Then I think, well, what do we have to talk about? Who would we have a chance to kick if it was going to be
exactly
gentler? Anyway, let's move to something that's sort of personal and at the same time it's political, and that's Angela Rayner, who's been accused by the Tories, I think.
Several Tory MPs allegedly.
Of crossing her legs too often. Do you want to tell? I would probably say the wrong thing, Pat. So could you use your silver tongue to tell us?
Angela Rayner is the deputy leader of the Labour Party. I better be careful where I put this myself. A good-looking woman, etc., etc. And it seems she's become because of her looks and whatever, she's become the target. And Jude, I definitely think it's deliberately political. Angela Rayner has been very effective when she stood in for Keir Starmer at the dispatch box. And I think she's done better against Bojo than Starmer. And I think some of these Tory guys don't like it. And so here they're going to throw a pervy smear at her to knock her off her stride. And I genuinely think it's politics rather than sexism. They just want to, they've got an 80-seat majority, Jude. Why are they feeding this story to the Mail on Sunday? I think it's deliberately to sort of put her off her stride, and it's and so on. And just another example of the dirty tricks that the Tory party are up to. And Jude, it's ridiculous. By the way, numerous people are saying it's one of the most ridiculous allegations they throw out. She sits on the front bench the same as everybody else.
Well, as I understand it, the Tories are saying that she's crossing and uncrossing her legs continually. Now, the spokesman for Angela Rayner says that he's saying categorically that is untrue. That should be a simple matter. It could be established because they're talking about Prime Minister's question time largely. So that must be on tape somewhere. So they should make a decision, show one way or another. If somebody says that, they've got to show us instances of this happening first of all, and then ask yourself, what does it matter?
But you also ask yourself, what's behind it?
Well, it's distractions behind it. Distractions behind everything, and of course, they want to make Angela Rayner feel ill at ease. And say, well, she's really just, playing up and playing in her sex. She's doing, they say it's basic instinct where Sharon Stone with Michael Douglas, that she sat showing a lot of leg and that distracted him. But then another way of looking at it, Pat, is everything's fair in love and war. She's not exactly, she's not a snowflake.
I know it's politics and it's a dirty game, but I think when you cross over into attacking someone personally, I know sexually, as she said herself.
That's not sexually, Pat. Come on. Crossing your legs isn't sexually.
No, but it is in this case, the way this has been put. They're basically, if you basic instinct is very film. There's one scene in that where which we're not going to get into, where she crosses her legs, and it's aimed at deliberately sexualizing something during an interrogation, and they're putting this out that this is the sort of thing she's at to sort of put Boris off his stride during question time. Jude, it's nasty, and it most certainly is personal, and it's designed to totally put her off her stride. And Jude, that's way below the belt.
Well, I think that they should establish first of all whether or not it happened, because her camp is saying no, it never happened. She doesn't do that. And when I think of her, when I see her at question time, the only time I see it, Prime Minister's question time, I don't remember her crossing her legs. I'm sure she
I
would
no,
have
no,
crossed.
I've watched Question. In fact, it never even occurred to me. It never occurs to me anyway, because sometimes some of the route. But the one thing I will say, I've seen her a couple of times, and I thought she was much more impressive than Keir Starmer,
Aye.
and I think that's the real problem.
Aye, you could be right there. You could be right. She left school at 16. She became
Yeah,
pregnant, and
yeah,
she left school at 16 and
very
became a
impressive,
care
Karen.
worker. She said
Yeah,
her job was a care worker. I find that very impressive.
it's very good, and she did, and she's raised her family, and she's now deputy leader, and she's very capable.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. If she get a haircut now. Oh, I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have said that. Because
That's
long
her
hair is a
hairstyle.
fashion. I hate people with long hair because I don't have long hair. I don't have hair. Never mind long hair. Okay.
Right.
Right. The final one, Pat, this morning, because I know you're dashing off to pleasure pots throughout the day, with brief intervals coming home for cups of tea.
Yes,
The last one is the death penalty, and you spotted this one. There was a guy. I was going to say assassinated, but he was executed last Thursday.
Yeah, Carl Wayne Buntian. He was 78, Jude. And he had been 30 years on death row in Texas. Jude, I don't know what sort of like, I have lost faith totally in America, and I think it's become a totally regressive place. But let me fill you in. Carl Wayne Buntian shot dead a policeman. Now he was no innocent naive victim or anything. He shot dead a policeman in 1990, as far as I remember, and he had numerous convictions beforehand. But he was 78 years of age. He had been 30 years on death row. The vast majority of it spent in isolation in a cell. In fact, apparently he spent the most part of the last 30 years, 23 hours a day in his cell. Can you imagine sitting in a wee room like this, dude, 23 hours a day, right? So on. And apparently he suffered from arthritis and various other conditions. Dude, I would love to know what sort of mentality, what sort of inhumanity, what sort of justice system that says it's all right to keep somebody on death row for 30 years and then execute them and so on. Now, if that isn't cruel and inhuman and barbaric treatment, and the Americans have no right when they look at the Arabs, the Saudis, and so on, and say these people are barbarous. Like, look at Texas, look at Florida, and so on. By the way, Jude, let me throw in one other thing. Now that I'm on this subject. America seems to be going back the way, and I mean regression as a society. Last week in Florida, Ron DeSantis, who's the governor there, announced the banning of 54 books for schools. Banning books, Jude, in 2022. So, by the way, I saw some of the ones they've banned, and I read them. There's bugger all wrong with them, and so on. So, Jude, America seems to be almost going back to the medieval. Anyway, that's my rant.
Well, that thing about books is a very interesting one. We're going to discuss it further, mind you, because there might be books that it would be suitable for you might enjoy, but they mightn't be suitable either intellectually or ethically for children in the school. But anyway, come back to the point. Pat, I'm forced to say this now. Your tale of Carl Wayne Buntian is sort of moving and melancholy with all the troubles he had and arthritis and being in jail and solitary confinement and so on. But if the law in Texas says the death penalty for killing someone, then that's the law. We should be, you wouldn't say, we'll let him off because, he had arthritis and he was kept in a prison cell, so on. I think you have to decide, are you for or against the execution of people? And if you're for it, it doesn't matter a damn really in the end, whether they're old or whether they're young, whether they're arthritic, whether they're had a bad time up to then. The law says you go. That's the problem, I think. And the problem is that these people will take human life. I personally, I was trying to think this through, and you're what you said it one day when we discussed something similar to this. I think that only in circumstances where it was him or her and me or me, that I would take human life.
Yeah, I'm the same.
So to see it codified and put into the legislation of the country, I know it has been traditionally the eye for the eye, but it's absolutely barbarous.
But Jude, absolutely. And here's the thing, Jude. See, a lot of Texas. They're a lot of this Bible thumping stuff, and they're about Jesus Christ and all the rest of it. But I always I love these people in Texas who are pro-life and anti-abortion. But by God, they're out front when it comes to execution. They're and the cheerleaders for it. It's this contradiction. Texas is a real right-wing state where you need to be somewhere to the right of Genghis Khan or Adolf Hitler to get elected. Yet, what do you call it? And they're full of this. There are more churches, I think, in Texas than any other state, and so on. And yet, this is the sort of stuff they come out with.
I think, with all respect, that's a bit of a red herring. Whether or not the rest of the state, does things badly, they've got all sorts of stupid laws and so on. You're being pulled away from the central point. Should you have the death penalty? And there is a certain consistency in them being sort of fundamentalist Christians. Yeah. If they concentrate on the Old Testament, like it's an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. So there would be a certain harmony there. But I just, when you think about it for a moment, leave aside who the person is. Any human life, we'll take this guy, we'll walk him down a corridor, we'll put him in a chair, we'll strap him in, and we'll switch on the current, and he'll die inside a couple of minutes. That's just... It's
ritualized killing, Jude. It's horrific. Anyway, really is. Jude, by the way, I don't have any respect for it. Jude, there's usually a lot of crimes are committed in seconds. But see this sort of thing with the law things. This guy was 30 years. I mean, 30 years in death row. Dude, that is cruel and inhuman to start with.
Well, what would you do then with? But you see, that's the thing, Pat. I would agree in many ways, like being and certainly being in solitary confinement or even in prison for all of your life, for most of your adult life, is, I think, in some ways a worse penalty than being killed, being executed. Yeah. So maybe we need to think about that as well. I mean, there's two reasons why people should be, when they commit a crime, two things should happen. One, they should be punished so they realize that this is not something we accept. And two, there should be a proper emphasis on an effort to rehabilitate people. Yeah. People kill people because all sorts of circumstances are going on in their lives. And it'd be a question of discovering what those are and trying to rectify them. So
what do you call it? Bunty apparently was in his 40s. He had various problems. I think he might have been a druggie and whatever. Mm-hmm. He was stopped by the cops, and whatever happened, he shot the policeman and ran away. Now, I don't think it's pre-planned or premeditated or anything like that. So, but then 30 years waiting to die for that. Jude, I have the death penalty doesn't bring. Remember, what was his name? Was it Arthur Pierpoint or whatever his name was? The hangman, the hangman in Britain. When he was retired, somebody asked him, was he in favour of the death penalty, and he said no. And somebody asked him why. He says, well, it never brought any victim back, did it? Now, why he was the hangman, if he believed that, I don't know. But anyway, that was his. And if he who was there at the last moments of, or the ghastly last moments of various people's lives came to that conclusion, I think, now, I haven't said that, Jude. I know maybe the victim, Bunty's victim's family, if they were sitting there saying it's very easy for you, but this was our father and this was our brother and this was whatever, and this thug killed him, and I can understand that. But Jude, this ritualized killing of people by the state, no.
The final thing I would say about it, Pat, is there's no going back with that. And if you stop to think about during the Troubles, Birmingham 6, Guildford 4, any number of people who were put in prison.
But Jude, there was a number of, they're on the record, I can't remember. There was one MP in Birmingham, as far as I remember, wanted the Birmingham 6 executed and called for, and remember there was a couple of public hang them, Jude, these people were totally innocent, they would have been hanged.
That's right. That's right. And there's no going back from that. And you're forever coming across cases of people who they now find too late, and then they start apologizing and trying to recompense their families. It's the road of no return. Exactly. And it actually shows kind of laziness, I think, in the state. We'll take this very simple sort of way of doing it. We'll kill them. And everybody will say that's fair. One life, another life.
Richard, and my final point is, but look, I think the Brits, the last execution was somewhere about 1966. The French somewhere in the early 70s. America is going back the way. They're starting to reintroduce executions. They're banning books. Their cops are shooting more people in the streets than ever before. They're electing Looney Tunes. Like if you read last week, Marjorie Taylor Greene, she's a representative from Georgia. She's, what is a woman? She's, we come from Adam's rib. You know, this is, dude, they're electing people like this. And you're going, good, merciful Jesus. You know, I know whatever. Remember at one stage, hey, when the people left on the Mayflower, so what was it, 1620? All these dissidents, they were going to a new place where they thought there'd be religious and political and social freedom and the land of the free and the home of the brave. It's been turning out into, you know, it's like living in what 16th century, wherever, medieval, where the guillotine and the what do you call it, are now becoming popular and banning books. And they'll soon be saying, by the way, the earth is flat.
Well, there's a lot of bad things. I agree with you. Bad trends, and Trump sort of led all of those. But I know there is that tradition in Texas where, you know, life is cheap. But keep in mind the fact too, Pat, the states do provide a very good place to live for many people. There's a lot of people who were involved in Republican activities during the Troubles who, for one reason or another, moved to the States. And many of them, and I've met some of them, and they've built lives they never would have built in Ireland.
But you know,
so there's an opportunity.
But Jude, it's going the other way now. I think they're going down the hill. I think they've reached the apex and they're going down the other side.
That's a gloomy thought for a Monday morning. Anyway,
okay, Pat. All the best.
Enjoy the rest of this week. This is probably the best time of year. I suggest you take a camera.
It's nice out today, and apparently it's going to be right for the rest of the week.
Oh, the trees and the dandelion. And listen, Pat, one last thing. If on your rambles you happen to come across some county council worker killing daisies, dandelions, or buttercups,
or whatever,
kill him. Death penalty for him. That's it. Death penalty.
Collins calls for the death penalty for daisy cutters. Good luck, Jude. Good luck.
Okay, Pat. All the best. Thanks.